gotta be short. Ready? Yeah. All right, we'll call the, what is this? We'll call this the,
John.
I know, where am I? Where's my notes? We'll call, what are we calling this? No, it's not. We'll call this the Municipal Buildings Subcommittee to order. Mr. Clerk?
Chairman Leahy,
Yes,
Counsel
present.
Cirillo,
Present.
Counsel Kennedy, two present.
Thank you. So tonight, we're going to go over the report that was submitted from Chief Winwood on the fire stations, the conditions of the buildings, and some of the needs. And we're going to have Chief Winwood go over the report and see what we can do with this to come up with a solid plan to start fixing up the buildings, get the washing machines in. That's another subject. And so we'll open it up with Chief Winwood.
Thank you, Counselor. So this is a brief report on some of the more critical issues on our fire stations. Altogether, we have 10 buildings. We have 8 fire stations, and then we have 2 closed stations. One is our fire prevention office, and one is our training center out on Rogers Street. So there's a captain in charge of each station, and they've compiled some bigger reports, some more extensive reports. This is just kind of a brief overview of some of the most critical issues. So what I'd like to do is I've been working with DPW Commissioner Jim Donison and with Connor Baldwin, the CFO, to try to identify funding and to try to prioritize some of the issues. So if it's okay with you, I'll briefly go over the list and talk a little bit about each station. So the first station is our Lawrence Street station. And our most critical problem is the concrete apparatus floor over at Lawrence Street. The station was built in 1891, and back then the engines and the ladders were pulled by horses, so it's the trucks are a lot heavier than they were, obviously, back in the 1800s. On one side there's a ladder truck that weighs 50,000 pounds, and there's a big spot underneath the floor near the ladder truck that's corroded. The rebar is corroded. And that's my most critical issue I have right now in the fire station, so I'd like to get that one done as soon as possible. So the DPW has taken a look at it, and they've come up with a plan, and when we can identify funding, we'll take care of that, and then we'll move on to some of the other issues. Another big one at Lawrence Street is the chimney. It's in the middle of the building up on the roof, and the mortar has worn away between the bricks. So one of the bricks fell off, and it can be a danger to anyone walking by or anyone out in the parking lot. So that's another one that we'd like to get done right away. It's difficult to get at. The Logan lift that the city has doesn't reach up to where the chimney is, so that a lift would have to be rented, and the chimney would probably the top of the chimney would have to come off, be rebuilt, and then repointed. It may not be on this list, but the 2 driveways over there are in very poor condition. It's a hazard to people walking. When they plow the driveway, more of the old concrete gets ripped up, and that's another issue over at Lawrence Street. Sure. And then there's kind of a minor one. There's a fence on the side of the driveway that's leaning over, and once again, it's a hazard, and that one should be repaired as soon as possible. So that's the number 1 priority, the Lawrence Street station. The second priority is the Branch Street station. Again, built in the 1800s. It was built in 1877. And there's an issue with the floor there as well. In a lot of the older station, the floor drains don't work very well, so the water has been collecting over the years. There's some cracks in the floor. So the water's leaked down into the basement, and it's corroded one of the columns severely and one of the beams severely. So we had an engineer look at it, and his recommendation would be to replace at least one of the columns and a section of beam that's rotted, and also get the floor drains repaired so that the problem doesn't continue again in the future. Also at Branch Street, the windows and the frames are in poor condition, and they could use replacement. The third most critical station is, I kind of have it in reverse order on the list here. It'll be Old Ferry Road. The roof at Old Ferry Road has been leaking for a long time, and it needs to be replaced. It's been patched and repaired over the years, and it's at the point now where it needs a new roof. And because of the leaks in the roof, some of the interior of the station's gotten damaged. The electrical room, the hallway, the bathrooms. There was some new work done in the kitchen, and one of the cabinets got damaged from water leaking in. We get ice dams in the winter, so it's been leaking for a long time, and it's definitely one of our priorities to get that roof fixed over at Old Ferry Road. The restrooms could use some work over there, some updating. There's some rust on the walls, and the floors are in poor condition. So that is our third priority, the Old Ferry Road Station. The next one is West 6th Street Station. We recently did have some work done in the basement over there. We had a sewer backup, so an environmental company came in, cleaned out the basement, and they cleaned the floor down there. We do have some other issues over there. We have an old boiler in the basement that's covered in asbestos, and we need to have a company come in and abate that asbestos and remove the old boiler. There's some electrical issues over there. They could use some updating. They have a new hot water tank in the basement, and there's an extension cord that powers that hot water heater. That should be wired properly. There's also some exposed wires down there, down in the basement. The exterior walls over there are made of brick, and there are some points where the mortar has eroded and needs to be repointed on the outside of that building. Some of the windows over there, most of the stations have some of the windows that are old and don't work properly, and some of the frames are rotted. The door over there needs to be repaired. The front door doesn't close and seal properly, so there's heat leaking out in the wintertime, and that needs to be repaired. And like I said, the captain at West 6th Street's come up with a very extensive list that we could perhaps look at moving into the future in future years. So the next station on the list is the JFK Civic Center here on Moody Street. And once again, we've got a problem with the floor drains. They don't work over there, so in the wintertime, when the trucks come back and they have snow on them, the snow melts, the water builds up on the floor, and it's a danger to the firefighters. Their gear gets wet. So those drains need to be replaced. It's a pretty big job over there. It's built on a slab. So there's been different options that we've talked about, but digging up part of the floor is going to be part of it, and it's very thick, so it's going to be a pretty extensive job, but that's been a problem for a number of years over there. In the kitchen, we're hoping to get a commercial kitchen sink and some new plumbing done, and replacement of some of the cabinets that are in poor condition in the kitchen over there. In the restroom, some of the tiles have fallen off the wall in the restroom and shower areas. Those need to be replaced. The apparatus floor where the truck's parked, there's 6 heaters there, and they're old. 5 of them do work, but they only work when the temperatures get down to about 30 or 40 degrees. And this past winter, when it got really cold, they weren't working well enough to keep the trucks warm enough. Some of the trucks have water in them, so it's important to keep the trucks warm when they're inside the garage. I have another one that didn't make the list. The poles over there that people slide from the second floor down to the apparatus floor, they have covers around them, and those plastic covers are broken, and they help keep the cold air out of the living area, so those need to be replaced.
Some of those in the firehouses that we visited didn't have them, so.
Some of the older stations have like a box built around it, and there's a door. You open the door and go in and slide down. So that helps with the heating and the air conditioning.
Okay.
But the Civic Center was built in 1972.
Right.
And it was a different method then. They have these plastic covers that
Yeah, I saw that.
and some of them are broken, so those need to be repaired.
Okay. So on Lawrence Street, was that wide open though up there? It was kind of, it was in like a little.
Yeah, it's in like a little closet type of a thing.
Yeah, okay, so that doesn't, you don't lose too much heat?
No, that's the door helps out with the heat a little bit there.
Okay, all right.
There were a couple other issues that I skipped over on Lawrence Street. The day that you and I went over there, Counselor, there was an issue with the bathroom upstairs. There was water leaking out, and it damaged the floor on the first floor ceiling. So that's another issue that didn't make this original list on Lawrence Street. One other issue at the JFK Civic Center. We have some female firefighters that work at the Civic Center now, and there should be a separate shower area for males and females. There's only one big shower area, so at some point we'd like to add another shower somewhere. So next on the list is the Gorham Street Station. The kitchen floors over there need to be replaced, the flooring itself, as well as the subfloor. There's some areas where the refrigerator is and where the sink is, they're kind of sinking, so that needs to be ripped out. There's been some leaking over the years. So the subfloor and the flooring needs to be replaced over there. The apparatus floor, once again, where the trucks park, is very old, and part of it's starting to crumble. So that needs to be repaired. The reinforcement underneath, the columns underneath need to be looked at. And the floor itself should be sealed and perhaps painted or somehow sealed so that the deterioration doesn't continue into the future. And then the basement over at Gorham Street. We need to have a company come in, a cleanup company, and there's some asbestos down there, there's old coal, there's leaking oil tanks, there's a lot of general debris. And that basement, as well as a couple of the other ones I mentioned with the asbestos, need to be cleaned out by a environmental company. The next one is High Street. Some of these items on the list have been repaired over at High Street. The kitchen floor was repaired. The plumbing under the kitchen sink was repaired. The heater on the apparatus floor was replaced. The only issues that we saw over there were a few of the windows were cracked and the front door needs to be replaced. So those are pretty minor items. We should be able to get those done fairly quickly.
Excuse me, so didn't we have some trim missing in the back, right?
There was some trim missing in the back also over at High Street. And the basement could probably use a clean out, but I don't think we'd need a clean out company for that. We might be able to get the DPW to help us out with that.
Okay, and how did the repairs get done over there? Was that like on a waiting list and maybe it jumped?
Yeah, the lands and buildings people took care of the items in the kitchen. And they purchased a heater also for the apparatus floor and put that in.
Okay.
I believe it
Just
came out of the,
wondering how I guess now we have an order of priority, but I'm just wondering why we went over to High Street versus going over to Lawrence Street or Gorham Street, so I'll ask that after.
yeah, it was probably because it was kind of a minor item, and I think it came out of the budget for lands and buildings.
Okay,
The Lawrence Street project is going to be a lot more money.
okay, all right, thank you.
Stevens Street, the stucco on the outside of the building needs to be repaired, and some painting needs to be done on the interior walls, ceilings, as well as the exterior. And there's a couple of other items that didn't make the list over there. Many of the windows need to be repaired or replaced, especially in the basement. Some of them have cardboard over areas where the window is broken and some rodents are getting in. And the flooring needs to be repaired and replaced in the living area over at Stevens Street. The flooring is in very poor shape. And that was it for Stevens Street. The fire prevention office on Mammoth Road, it needs an awful lot of things, and that's probably our worst building. And we're looking at some options right now where we might be able to move the office to another location.
Yeah, I think that might be the best thing for over there, so we'll continue to work on looking for a new location.
For the short term, I know the city's lift is over there, and the lands and buildings is going to try to repair some of the openings to keep the birds out of the attic and the basement,
Okay,
just for a short-term thing.
yeah.
So our other building is our training center on Rogers Street. The tile roof over there needs some repairs. There's some leaking going on there. And the eaves around the roof, some of those are rotted and need repair. There's a couple of interior concrete block walls that have pretty big cracks in them. Those need to be repaired. The furnace in the basement, there was some water down there and it corroded the bottom of the furnace. So the furnace is going to need to be replaced. There's some windows over there that are cracked, and there's a door that's pretty old, just a regular front door that needs to be replaced. And then there's a metal grate on the apparatus floor that's damaged, and the cars drive in and out of there, and that needs to be replaced so it won't damage any of the cars. And there's a couple of other items over at the training center that didn't make the list. There's a sump pump in the basement that's not working properly. It needs to be replaced. And there's a bulkhead that's rotted that needs to be replaced. That station was built in 1924, so the bulkhead's pretty old, and that could use replacement as well.
Now, let me interrupt for a second. Would you say that might be a place where we could relocate? Like, it might be worth it to
If we could find a big,
add another municipal building?
yeah, if we could find a big location, we could possibly locate the training center and fire prevention.
That's kind of a nice building. If we could sell that and somebody developed it, it might be, worth something. But if we have you stay there and do all these repairs, it might be worth it to see if we have anything, any inventory where we could move you. What type of training do you do there?
We do EMS training, we have classes out there, we have multi-company drills out there where we drill on firefighting, different rescue techniques.
I mean, it's not the most ideal place, right, would you say, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit out of the way, and I would think both that station and Mammoth Road would be worth a lot of money to
Yeah.
a developer.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So as I said, that's kind of a brief overview of some of the most critical problems at some of the stations. And the captains have written a more extensive report with some photos. I can email that to the subcommittee tomorrow. Another issue we have is backup generators. We have 8 stations. The Civic Center down here has a backup generator that backs up both the police station, the fire station, and this building. Our other stations do not have backup generators. So I talked to George Rose in Emergency Management today, and he's going to pursue a possible grant from MEMA where we may be able to get some grant funding to add backup generators to the other stations.
And what size generators are you talking for a building like that, like a permanent one, not a,
Probably a permanent one that would come out automatically. It would test, once a week. It would have a diesel tank or a gas tank.
Okay.
The one over here is a pretty big one. And they're pretty expensive, but if we can find some grant funding for that, that might be a good option. And we may start with some of the houses have 2 trucks, an engine, and a ladder. We may start with the double houses and then go for the single houses maybe next year.
okay. All right, and then one other quick thing. We've got motions on tonight, but the extractors, you call them?
Yes, the
How we dealing with those?
washer machine, the heavy-duty washer machine extractors. Currently, we have old residential washer machines in the stations, and we've got funding through the capital plan last year to buy 8 new extractors. So we have 1 up and running at the Civic Center, and then we have 2 others that have been delivered by the company that sells them, but the plumbing and the electric hasn't been hooked up yet. And I'm putting them in 1 or 2 at a time so that we don't remove the old one and not have a washing machine while we're waiting for the others to get hooked up.
Sure. All right, and so that's 3 that we have?
We have 3
physically?
installed, and we have funding to get 5 more, so we'll have 1 in each station, so we can wash the turnout gear after a fire. And the firefighters can use their second set of turnout gear while the first set is drying to get some of the carcinogens off the turnout gear.
All right, and where do we get the money for the extractors again?
Through the capital budget last year,
All right, so have those been ordered or purchased, or?
we got a purchase order for 7. We already purchased 1 last year, so we have a purchase order for 7, and we've had 2 out of the 7 delivered. So we've bought 3 of them, and we're purchase order for 5 more.
Okay, but we haven't physically bought them yet.
Just 3 of them, that's correct. The other 5 we have not physically bought yet. And I know the state's looking into
Yeah,
some
that's why I
possible
asked,
funding.
yeah, so,
I'm just not sure how long that will take.
okay, well, it's worth looking into. If it's.
Absolutely.
If it doesn't work for us, it doesn't work, so.
Sure.
Okay, all right. Any questions, Council Sorrell?
Yes, I see that you have number 1, 2, 3, you have these items numbered. I'm sorry, can you tell me again are these numbered in order of this item is critical, or is it just, you numbered, the numbers, are they, like number 1, is that the most critical on this sheet?
It is. The numbers indicate the priority, and the real critical ones are up at the top. Obviously, the floors where the trucks park are the most critical. We don't want
Right.
to see a
Absolutely.
bad accident happen. So yes, and if you see a letter next to the number, there's more than one of that issue at different houses, like A, B, C. Like
Right.
windows, for example, a lot of the houses have some window issues.
Right,
And then next to each house, I wrote the year that it was built on
Yes.
the left. And as you can see, these houses are pretty old.
yeah,
And then, moving forward over the next, 10, 20 years, the stations are going to continue to deteriorate. So, like I said, the captains have designed a more extensive report for each station. And I think long-term, we need to look at maybe doing some extensive repairs or possibly building some new stations if there's funding available.
right. Thank you.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Chief, have you done a cost estimate on what all this would cost? If we were to go and do all the repairs of all the stations or everything that you've got on this list, do we know how much it would cost?
It's kind of difficult. If city employees do the work, it's obviously a lot cheaper than if we send it out to bid. I have been meeting with Jim Donison from the DPW Commissioner to try to come up with some estimates. And, perhaps we can take another look and come up with some real estimates.
Well, I think it would be good to have some cost estimates for the total, obviously, but also for the individual stations. And then,
Sure.
I mean, it probably wouldn't be that we would do all 8 all at once.
Right.
But with the stations could then be prioritized, and we'd at least know how much it was going to cost going forward to do 1 or 2 a year, say,
Sure.
to get everything done.
Yeah, I have been meeting with the DPW Commissioner. We'll see if we can go up with some concrete numbers, and I can present that to the subcommittee.
How long do you think that will take to do that?
We think we could get it done in pretty short order, probably a couple of weeks.
Okay. Do you have, how do we heat the stations? Are they all gas heat, or are they oil heat, or how are they, or are they different?
They are different. I know down here, I think both of these buildings are heated the same way through gas. Most of them are gas heaters. Down here, we have 2 different systems. We have a big gas heater that heats the whole building, and then we have individual heaters in each room, heaters and air conditioners. And then on the apparatus floors, we often have heaters that are hanging from the ceiling that are gas-fed, and the doors are opening and closing all the time. So it's kind of difficult to heat some of the apparatus floors.
Right.
Some of the stations also have the old radiators like we see here.
Okay. So do I understand that all of them have gas heat, and that some might have backup systems as well, but that the primary heating source would be gas?
Yeah, most of them are gas. With the older houses have the radiators. Next door, the building is so big, there's different areas that are heated kind of differently. I think there's a chiller in the basement of the Civic Center that heats that whole JFK Civic Center.
Okay.
It's a forced hot water system, and it's run by gas.
And do all of the fire stations have air conditioning, at least in the living areas?
Some of them have window air conditioners. The newer ones, Old Ferry Road and the Civic Center, have a central air, but the one at the Civic Center is currently not working.
Okay. Would it be, do any of them have solar panels, or would solar panels make sense, do you think, on those buildings?
I know some of the buildings in the city have solar panels. I don't believe any of the fire stations do. I think some of the schools, 5 of the schools, the auditorium, the water department, and I believe that energy that gets generated goes back into the grid, and the city's given a discount on the electric bill. As far as heating the actual station, I don't think there's too many of those solar panels around here that would actually heat the building where the panels are located.
No, neither do I, but like with the schools, we would be able to sell it back into the grid and maybe save money. I mean, you would know better than I whether or not those stations the roofs have enough surface area and how they are in order to make that be a viable thing to do.
Yeah, possibly at some of them, like down here at the Civic Center, it's a flat roof. Some of the older ones are very steep. It may not be plausible, and they have the slate roofs. But I could certainly sit down with Jim Donison and go over those details and get back to you on that.
Okay. And the stations where there's a problem from the pole, the slide down pole, right? Or what do you call that pole? The slide down pole?
Firefighter's pole, I guess.
Firefighter's pole. There's a way that to trap the heat upstairs. And that's what's broken?
Well, down here at the Civic Center, there's plastic doors that kind of go up and down.
Okay.
And they're broken, so the cold air from downstairs comes upstairs.
Have they been broken for some time?
They have.
Okay. Are there stations where it costs an exorbitant amount to heat the station because of items like that?
I believe there is, and if some of the windows got replaced and some of the heating systems got updated, I think it would save money in the long run on the heating bills.
Okay. Do we keep the heating bills separately month by month and by station? Do we have it like that?
We pay a gas bill each month, but I can get you a breakdown of what it costs to heat the stations. And
well, I guess what I'm getting at is it might be worthwhile to take a look at the recent history over the past few years of the stations and see whether or not the heating costs have spiked in any of those stations, and maybe there's problems there that should be addressed more immediately.
Sure, I'll take a look at that, and I would imagine replacing things like doors and windows and some of the pole hole openings would certainly help. And I'll take a look at that and see if I can get you some numbers on that as well.
Okay, and I think the final thing, you talked about the training center. Isn't there a training center down in Sudbury? Or is that a state training center or something like that?
The Mass Fire Academy is in Stowe, and
Okay.
we send our new firefighters down there. Right now, we have a group of 5 down there for 11 weeks, and they get basic firefighting training down there. And then we also have classes where people can get certified as hazmat technicians and different, new techniques. But on a daily basis, we have drills in the city, and we have a training captain that organizes different drills. And we train on different firefighting techniques, water rescue techniques, automobile extrication, all different techniques. EMS, we do a lot of EMS training for about half of our firefighters are EMTs. So we have to take continuing education classes, and we hold some of those out at the training center. Our new employees, we train them in first aid and CPR. We just train, once a year, we have to retrain everyone in CPR. We just completed that out at the training center.
Okay.
So it does get a lot of use out there. So we have a training captain out there. We have an EMS lieutenant that coordinates all the EMS training. And she keeps track of the Narcan and the oxygen and the medical supplies and hands them out to the different companies as necessary. We have a public education officer that works out there, and he works with the kids in the schools. He has a safe house that he brings around and teaches kids about fire safety and about some of the perils of the drug opiate epidemic that we have going on. So we do use the building quite a bit for different training activities.
Okay, so I guess that's really what I was getting at, is whether or not we might be better off just to utilize the Stowe facility when we can, rather than to have our own training center. But what you're saying is that for smaller training sessions on an ongoing basis, we need to keep this training center open?
Yeah, the Fire Academy in Stowe, we only use sporadically. New firefighters, people might get on there a couple of times a year for different classes, but we use the training center pretty much every day of the year for different training evolutions.
Does everybody use that facility in Stowe just occasionally?
Well, all new firefighters pretty much in the state now get trained down there, and it's funded by fire insurance on people's homes, so there's no cost to the communities. But every day there are other classes going on down there as well, and different techniques, hazmat, different firefighting techniques.
Okay. And so is there a continuing ed program that we need to follow? In other words, are there people that need to get recertified for EMT, I guess, in other areas from time to time? Is that the case?
They don't do any EMS training down at Stowe. Most of the communities do that.
No, I understand they do that locally, but do we do other types of training that's required in order that firefighters gets recertified periodically?
No, there's actually no required training that goes on at the Fire Academy.
Okay. Do you think it would be a good idea if there was? I mean, I understand that you and I aren't going to decide that there's going to be, but do you think that would be a good idea if there was that?
We don't have a lot of funding for a training budget, to send people down there on their days off. And during the week, firefighters are on duty, and there'll be 3 people on a truck, and they'll go out to a drill, and if they get a call, they can respond to that call. So it's a more cost-effective way of training people to do it here in the city.
Yep.
When you send people down there, they're gone pretty much for the day.
Yeah.
And you'd almost have to send them on their day off and either pay them overtime or comp time. So it's a lot more cost-effective to do it in-house. And we have a lot of experienced officers in the city. We have an experienced training captain that run these drills. We have a deputy chief that's in charge of training. So we can do a lot of our training in-house. We go out on the river with our boats and we train locally on that. It's something we've been doing for a long time, and it works pretty well.
Okay. Thank you. I know I'm looking forward to seeing the cost estimate on each one of these, and I'm sure probably the rest of the subcommittee is as well. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we could probably come up with different numbers for in-house versus subcontracting out different jobs. Some of them have to be subbed out, and I know the people in lands and buildings are very busy. So it's difficult for them sometimes to do the real big jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just one thing. So to go on what Councilor Kenny was saying, would it be worth it for Lowell to have a training center here? I know that you said so someone's got to you get paid through funds through the insurance companies, but would that be something that might be work here in Lowell?
I don't think it would. I know Boston has their own fire academy. They hire a lot of people every year. And, you know, most of the classes have maybe 30 or 40 people in them for the new recruits. And in Boston, it kind of makes sense. Here in Lowell, we might hire an average of between 5 to 10,
I
maybe
mean,
15.
regionally, what if we did, you know, Lowell, Tewksbury, Chelmsford, Billerica, you know, Wilmington, Woburn, spread it out that way?
Yeah, it'd be quite an undertaking. I know the state government runs the fire academy, and they just opened a second facility out in Springfield for the people in the western part of the state.
Yeah,
But to be competing against the state fire academy wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. I know with the police, different communities have, like in Lowell, they have their own
Yeah.
police academy. But in the fire service, where it's run by the state, financially, I don't think it, you know, we wouldn't be able to get money from the insurance companies, I wouldn't think, to run our own academy that would compete with the state.
yeah. Okay, and then the other thing, we were talking about gas, you know, most of the firehouses might be using gas to heat. We should look into if there's any programs with National Grid, you know, that would help replace the furnaces, and then maybe that might tie into something like Mass Save, where we could get energy audits for the houses and see where we need to go for, you know, windows, doors, things like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can check with Susan Griffin over at National Grid and see if she can point me in the right direction on that.
Sure,
I
okay,
can follow up on that.
yep, okay. Councilor Sorrell?
Yes, I'm really interested in seeing the cost estimates for each building also, because I know you have Lawrence Street first as being the station that is in most need. But once you get into looking at the different needs of the different stations, you might find that, say, for example, West Sixth Street, near and dear to my heart, might have some big ticket items that is going to cost more. So
Sure.
I'm very, very interested in seeing the cost estimate. I think that's going to bring out a lot of information that we can move forward with.
Sure.
And I'm also excited about seeing, I know that for solar to be on a roof, it's generally south-facing roofs, or you know, on a flat roof, you can actually lift up the solar panel to face the south. So I think that there is that opportunity for us to alleviate some of the gas with solar. So I agree with Councilor Kennedy as far as that's concerned. So that's just what I wanted to add, and thank you.
Okay, I'll certainly look into the solar panel option and see if we can save some money that way as well.
Yeah, Mr. Donaldson couldn't be here tonight, but, you know, let's look into, I know you prioritize them, but let's look into, you know, the floors, the roofs, windows, doors, and then electrical, like you had mentioned, electrical in one of the houses.
Sure.
You know, that shouldn't be a problem. That should be, we should be able to take care of that pretty quickly.
When the city electrician hooks up the extractors, maybe we can get some electrical work done at the same time. And as far as the roofs, I know 3 of the stations have gotten new roofs over the past 5 years or so.
Yeah,
And there have been some projects that have been completed over the past 5 to 10 years, but the stations are very old, and they really do need a lot of attention.
yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of room in the city to move houses around and construct new buildings on
Sure.
open lots or anything, so we've got to renovate the buildings we have. But I'm more concerned with trying to keep up with the work, you know?
Right.
Some of the electrical work, you know, that really shouldn't be difficult. I don't know why we're not keeping up with that, so we'll have to sit down again with Mr. Donaldson, figure out what we can do immediately, what we need to get some pricing on, and some of the drain work too. I mean, if we just close up the drains and run a new drain, maybe that's, you know, just the
Yeah, I
better
know the
way to
Civic
go.
Center drains are going to be very expensive, but some of the other houses have basements under them.
Right.
And it's going to be a little bit of an easier job, I think.
Yeah,
But it's important to keep the water from dripping down into the
Right.
basement and, you know, destroying the building.
yeah. So, and we did tour, I don't know, 6 or 7 buildings, so we should be able to prioritize getting the basements cleaned up. If we need to open some windows to get some ventilation going through there to dry them up too, that'd probably be a good idea.
Yeah, we don't want to develop any mold issues, so the
Right.
ventilation's important in some of the older basements
Right.
still.
Okay. So when, we'll meet again, but we'll start working on this with the manager and DPW and see where we can go from here. And maybe in the fall, we'll meet again and get an update on where we are.
That sounds like a good plan, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, you mentioned on a few of these stations that the floor drains are broken. Why does that happen? What's,
I know over at the Civic Center, it's built on a slab.
Yes.
And the floor is very thick, it's like over a foot thick. And we're not really sure what's going on underneath the floor. The theory is that the drains have crushed over the years. And there's a lot of sand on the trucks, and they wash the trucks every day, so a lot of the sand's gotten washed into the drains over the years. And some of the other stations, like I said, there's a basement underneath them, so you can get a look at them, and they're just very, very old. And I'm sure they've got sludge and sand in them from years of use, over 100 years of use. But some of the stations that are built on a slab, it's kind of difficult to tell. You can't really see what's going on. We did have a company come in and try to take a look at the Civic Center drains with cameras, and they got to a point where they couldn't see any further. So the drains are either completely clogged or they're crushed. And then over there, when they rebuild, today's codes say that you have to separate the oil from the water. So we have to have an oil separator put in underground, so it does get a little bit expensive.
okay. Thank you. When did, who went on the tour, and when did the tour take place?
Councilor Leahy came out on a tour a couple of weeks ago. I know Councilor Samaras has come out and looked at some of the stations, and you're certainly welcome. If you want to, give me a call, we can certainly go around and take a look. Councilor Cirillo, ditto.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, it was kind of a short notice thing, so I should have notified you too. I just kind of didn't know when my next available time was. I'm getting ready for the subcommittee, so I just went over on a Friday and we looked at a few of the houses, so. But we can set up another one anytime. The Mammoth Road one was like the most urgent need to get people out of there. The basement's awful, the attic's awful, and the birds are everywhere, so.
Yeah, the stairs leading up to the second floor where the offices are very steep, and people go in every day from the public to get permits and to drop off plans, and it's kind of a dangerous stairway, and if someone's handicapped, they can't really climb up the stairs. It's not, I would say it's not ADA compliant.
I was going to say, so there's probably a code issue there with those stairs.
There is, and there's talk at the state level that as of February next year, Massachusetts is going to become an OSHA state where we'll fall under OSHA regulations.
Right.
So getting some of these repairs done will probably save the city money in the long run.
Right.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Thank you, Chief, for coming in, and we'll get working on this.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. So, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out today.
Well, you're welcome, Counselor.